Welcome back into HQ Spotlight on this Wednesday. So the FedEx St. Jude Championship, the first tournament of the FedEx Cup playoffs, getting underway tomorrow. So to remind you, it is the top 70 golfers in the rankings. The top 50 will make it over to the BMW Championship next weekend, and finally the top 30. So we're going to take a look at some of the guys that are kind of right on that cut line now and talk about what they need to do in order to make it next weekend. A notable Jordan Spieth barely made it at 48. Kirk Kitayama coming off his win at the 3M Open, sitting at 52, so he's got some work to do. Let's welcome in two of our experts here, Greg Ducharme, Michael Breed. So we're going to talk again about some of these guys kind of right on that mark right now. I'm going to start with Rickie Fowler, 64, so he has a lot of room to make up here. Michael, I was reading that he is changing some of his equipment around. I feel like I always look at Rickie as a kid. I didn't realize he was 36 years old, so he says it's easier on the body. In your opinion, Michael, what does he need to do?
He needs to, honestly, he needs to find something that he hasn't found. His best finish this entire year has been tied 7th. And Greg, you look at the numbers, the points that he needs and the projection of the points that he needs a 5th or 6th place finish. And he hasn't done that all year long. I don't care whether he changes equipment, changes caddies. I don't care what he does. Things aren't changing right now in his camp. And now you've got 70 of the best, 69 of the best playing in this event. I just don't see it going in the direction that it needs to go in for Rickie. The driver is mediocre at best as far as accuracy is concerned, and his strokes gained approach, he's 111th.
And that's a big concern on a golf course like this. His approach play, really even recently, has been very average over the last 6 weeks or so. And while his play and his results have been a little better, it's just not quite enough to achieve what he needs to achieve this week in order to advance. His best finish here is T13. As Michael was saying, we estimate a 5th or 6th place finish is what's needed. This is an uphill battle for Rickie Fowler.
Okay, so Rickie Fowler needs to find magic in a bottle. Maybe this guy does too, but he kind of found it at the last tournament. Chris Kirk, and if you're looking for a guy to cheer for at the Windham Championship, there was just one player to jump inside the top 70, it was Chris Kirk. So he's just happy to be here. Greg, we'll start with you. What do you need to see from him?
Yeah, I think we need to see more of the same. Last week's performance was fantastic. Chris Kirk is that guy right now, Michael. It looks to me like he's getting hot at the right time. In his last 2 starts, he's gained over 4 strokes approaching the green. He's gained strokes in all 4 categories over his last 2 starts. That's a really positive indicator for success. He's got to put together another great week, Michael, but everything I'm looking at says it's about to happen.
I'm with you, and he's been playing well of late, and he's played well here. He's got a tied 6th back in 2018 and tied 16th in 2023. The question that sits in front of all this is, does he have what it takes to get the number that he needs to get to? That's a 5th or 6th place finish, and that he may play great, but that may be just too big a hurdle for him to jump. And so I look for him to have a great week. I just don't know whether or not his great success that he's had of late and here is going to be enough to get him over the hurdle and get him into that top 50.
Okay, so he has a ways to go. Look, all of these guys really do, because everybody who are in those top spots are phenomenal. They're there for a reason. Tony Finau, he's at 60 right now. A little bit of caddy drama. I do like this right now. So his long-term caddy for 5 years split earlier this season. He's going to be on the bag for Colin Morikawa, but I believe Tony Finau, and Michael, you'll know this, you know all the tea, Tim Tucker, who was on Bryson's bag when he won the U.S. Open, I think. So what do we need to see from Tony Finau and, I guess, his caddy?
Something that we haven't seen all year long, and that's some consistency when he gets on the putting green. He has changed. He's had more putting strokes than I've seen this entire year, had more putting grips, more putters. There's been nothing that's been consistent with him on the putting green. And Greg, we really haven't ever worried about his ball striking, but I think the poor putting performance has put so much pressure on his ball striking that's actually kind of gone a little bit south. And so I kind of look at him and I go, okay, he needs to finish maybe 5th, maybe even 6th in this. And you look at where he is in the points, he's at 690. The projection is well above that, almost 1,000 to 1,100. I mean, he has to have a great week. And in order to have a great week, you got to putt great. And he just hasn't done that. 147th this year. I'm sorry, 117th this year in strokes gained putting.
Yes, and like you said, the ball striking has been massive concern too. I'm very curious to know if that does come from the putting. It also might come from the knee injury that he had. He had a little torn meniscus early in the year, and after having a great ball striking season last year, it seemed like he never recovered from that little seemingly minor injury. So I'm not saying that Tony Finau is hurt by any means. He never came back and got back to that level that we saw from him last year.
I always find that when I tear my meniscus, I fire my caddy. That's what I do.
I don't think you guys know this. You guys know I tore my meniscus, right? Like I blew out my entire knee just a couple months ago. So this is hurting my knee hearing about the meniscus.
Did you fire your caddy too?
You know, if I had a caddy who was helping me down that mountain trying to ski, I would have fired them. Let's talk here. And this is a guy that you advocated for, Michael Breed. We're going to talk about Aaron Rai. He's at 55 right now. And you said out of this entire list, maybe he's the kind of guy that's going to play the best out of all of them. So do you really believe that? And could we see him next weekend?
Absolutely, I believe it. In fact, I know it. And the reason why is that his ball striking has been fantastic. This is a guy who is second in driving accuracy. And everybody's talking about how this golf course is a second shot golf course. But the truth is that when you get into this rough that's going to be about 3 inches high and it's Bermuda, that might as well be like U.S. Open rough here. And so in order for this golf course at TPC Southwind to be a second shot golf course, you have to find the fairway. And it's not about distance. It's about in the short stuff. And this guy is second on the PGA Tour in driving accuracy. And that leads to good iron play. He's 31st, Greg, in strokes gained approach. It just all adds up. Oh, and by the way, he's been playing really, really good. And so he played here well last year. So I look at this and I just think to myself, this is going to be a great week for Aaron Rai. It might not just be a week where he gets inside that top 50. He might get himself inside the top 30. Don't look past him for a victory.
Yeah, I think it's very reasonable because of the extra importance this year on that driving accuracy. Like you said, the greens are brand new here, and brand new greens tend to play a lot firmer. When you have those really firm greens coming out of Bermuda rough, it becomes nearly impossible to control. They're also the third smallest greens on the PGA Tour. So for a player like Aaron Rai, who can put the ball into the short grass, he's going to have a better chance of finding the greens of regulation, giving himself birdie putts, playing a little offense on a course where if you're playing out of the rough, you're going to be playing a lot of defense.
Yeah, Michael gave us his Breed breakdown earlier this week, talking about just how small the greens are and how much water is on this course. I will also say, Aaron Rai, I did check. He's the 6th favorite to win, 30-1 odds. So if you like him, maybe put some money on him. All right, Kirk Kitayama, it's hard not to cheer for this guy right now. He's sitting at 52, not too much ground to go. He won the 3M Open. And I was reading, he said, I am so confident in my driver right now. I'm using my driver on holes I never would have pulled it out for before. Greg, how do you think he can fare?
Well, that's a very positive thing to hear from Kirk Kitayama because it's the biggest concern for me with him. I look, Michael, at what he's done this season and what he did at the 3M Open in that victory, and it was highlighted by great iron plays. Third on the PGA Tour in proximity to the hole. I love that, but the fairways at TPC Twin Cities, where he won the 3M Open, are about 35 yards wide. Here they go down to about 25 yards wide. And if you start missing these fairways, like you just said with Aaron Rai, it becomes very difficult. So hopefully he can keep it in play.
And the other thing about this golf course is that there's movement in the fairways. The courses are predominantly right to left shots, but there's movement to those. And as he's one of the longest hitters on the PGA Tour, 8th in driving distance, that will allow him to use some clubs other than the driver. But what he's got to do, to Greg's point, you got to find the fairway. And if he's struggling in finding the fairway, and he has, I get that he's got a lot of confidence, but you have to have the accuracy here. And he's 133rd in driving accuracy. And so while he might have good strokes gain approach number, here, if it's not in the fairway, it becomes really, really difficult. And as I said, it's almost going to play like a U.S. Open. And if that happens for him, you kind of wonder, like, what will his decision-making be? And when he starts missing some fairways back-to-back, which can absolutely happen here, what will happen with that confidence? And I'm just not sold on Kirk Kitayama, despite the fact that he just won.
Last guy we're going to talk about is Windham Clark. He's at 49, so pretty good standing right now. And this has been a frustrating year for him. He's gotten in trouble at a couple of the tournaments. And he said about 5 or 6 weeks ago, he did set a mini goal for himself to make it into the playoffs. And so he's not just doing this for his golf game, but he's personally doing it for himself. He says, I want to turn things around. Michael, can he stay in this position in order to advance?
I think he's going to enhance the position. If you look at what he's done over the last 3 or 4 weeks, actually since the U.S. Open, where he had some real frustration, and we're all aware of that, he has really played a lot better. And his behavior, by the way, has gotten back to what we are used to seeing out of Windham Clark, kind of stoic and not really sort of out on that kind of lose your mind. We saw it out of John Rahm, who would kind of do that stuff. But this is a guy who's finished tied 12th, tied 4th, tied 11th in 3 events. He's tied 7th here last year. He's coming in with a lot of confidence. He doesn't really have to do a tremendous amount to get inside that number. But I think what he's fighting for here is that Ryder Cup position. And if he can play the way he has been playing on a golf course that he's played well last year, that it might get to a point where, he gets himself like a 3rd or 2nd and puts himself in a position where he's not just on the outside looking in on the top 30. He's inside that top 30 and almost plays his way onto that Ryder Cup team.
If you focus on getting onto the Ryder Cup team as Windham Clark, you get yourself in a position where that becomes a realistic possibility, then you're heading to Eastlake for, beyond just the BMW. So I think that's a great point, Michael. You also mentioned his play, and the recent finishes have been much better. They've been better statistically, too. We talk about the importance of iron play. Each of the last 2 weeks have been his best iron play week since the Players' Championship in 2024. So it's been well over a year since he's hit the ball like this with his irons. I think things are trending in the right direction for Windham Clark.
Just really quickly, as we finish here, out of curiosity, Michael, how much, since we're talking about those guys kind of on the cut line in past playoffs, how much movement do we see in the top 50 from the first playoff event, to the second?
It's typically not a lot. I mean, what did we see? One player play themselves into the top 70 last week to this week. I don't really expect there to be a lot of movement. Maybe 2, possibly three individuals that are going to get in here. It's not one of those where you see a lot of movement, and in large part because of the points that are required. You start looking at a Tony Finau, he's got to gain like 300 points or something crazy like that. Now, I know the points are doubled here, Greg, but it's very difficult to really make that big jump.
Yeah, with those quadruple points, it's one thing to say, well, instead of 500 points to the winner, it's 2,000 points to the winner. But, the difference between each position is also quadrupled. So for second place, instead of getting 300 points, you get 1,200 points. That means the gap is, instead of 200 points, it's 800 points. So everything kind of, it changes in its magnitude. It allows the guy that's in 70th to get in. But it doesn't necessarily mean you're going to see more players move in.
Either way, phenomenal golf just ahead of us over the next 3 weeks. Greg Ducharme, Michael Breed, we appreciate it. We'll talk to you soon. And if you would like more betting advice when it comes to golf, check out the Early Wedge, part of the Early Edge podcast. There you go. As we get ready for the St. Jude Championship coming up this weekend. You can scan the QR code or just download it.